Hello and welcome to the 43rd Radical Poetry Reading. I'm Malva Kajali, Special Projects Associate here at The Rail, and today I have the pleasure and privilege of welcoming poet, performer, translator, and critic, straight from Puerto Rico, Urayoán Noel, to the Zoom stage. He's curated a fantastic lineup of poets and performers for us today, featuring LaTasha N, Nevada Diggs, Joey DeJesus, Yara Liceaga-Rojas, and Ronaldo V Wilson. We've started out all of our events here with two important acknowledgements. The first is that here in New York, we're on Lenape Hooking, the unceded land and waters of the Wappinger, Canarsie, Munsee, and Lenni Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and the Shinnecock Indian Nation. The second is an acknowledgement that Black Lives Matter. And I think it's worth mentioning that the heart of both of these acknowledgements is a commitment to the liberation of the oppressed and solidarity for all those who struggle for freedom. In that spirit, I encourage you to check out the chat for a living document of resources and actions that we've been putting together over the past few months, and I'll drop that right here. Truly do love LaTasha's hat. But now it's my honor to welcome our wonderful curator of this lunchtime. Urayoán Noel is a Puerto Rican poet, performer, translator, and critic living in the Bronx but tuning in from Puerto Rico. He's published 7 books of poetry and the prize-winning study Invisible Movement, Nuyorican Poetry from the 60s to Slam. He's also been a finalist for the National Translation Award and the Best Translated Book Award for his translations of Latin American poetry. Noel teaches at NYU and at Stetson University's MFA of the Americas. Tuning in live, Orion, take it away.
Gracias, Malvika. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this new social environment, which is by now an old social environment, but I guess in the liminal space between the digital as pandemic borderlands and whatever space of neoliberal opening we are in now. It is my joy, honor, and privilege to introduce all these fantastic poetas in lieu of a heavy conceptual statement or set of curatorial principles. I will just say that this was a personal act of curation. Throughout the past year, I have been sustained by the work of these 4 poets in a few senses. Firstly, as poets of remediation, right? Working on and off the page. Secondly, as poets who have been helping me make sense of digital space as a potential space for digital diasporas of various kinds, and largely also as a way of imagining a different set of digital coordinates. Think of the Rican, right? The Black, the queer, the brown, the non-binary, all as possibilities within a different configuration of spaces of poetry. And finally, maybe on a quirky note, I thought they would just mix it up a little bit. All these poets here crack me up. They're all really, really funny in different ways. And just saying, we love Brooklyn Rail, but I've been watching for a year. It can get a little stuffy and a little precious, especially when those artists talk to each other. Ay, Dios mía, what is happening? So along those lines, please let me not take up more of your time. I will do more proper intros when I present the individual poets, but I would like to jump right into a kind of free writing that's inspired by all 4 poets that will give way to an improvisation, welcoming everybody. So let's see how this goes. And again, I gave myself permission to just let it all hang out in the spirit of all these beautiful poetas, and gracias poetas, you know how much I love and admire you and the work that you do, so. That time we went to see David Amram at the Cornelia Street Cafe. Amram is still around. The cafe is not. Así es Nueva York. Presences and absences of writing when done quickly and hearing the inner mic. Amram played Pull My Daisy, his jazz version of the exquisite corpse poem with the same name by Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, and Neil Cassidy that appeared in the 1959 short film adaptation. That made me think about remediation and as collaboration, and about the Poetry is Busy series as it evolved over various sites across, along, and now beyond Puerto Rico. For that series, I read long vowel constrained text entirely off my phone and installed silly homophonic smartphone translations on the walls of the Museo de Arte Contemporáneo de Puerto Rico. And I watch you all curate and dream digitally. I remember the mid-2000s when you used to spam everyone your poems with a beautifully and strategically simple method. Title in the subject line, text in body, all uppercase, no framing or hello or signature. It felt like language of the digital ambient for everywhere and nowhere at once, yet rooted in your embodied particularity. And I thought I should write an essay called You or the Poetics of Anti-Hegemonic Slam, La Poética del Slam, del Spam Antihegemónico. And maybe I still should, te lo debo. Eso y par de cosas, o sea que inventemos, here's to collaboration and remediations from the underside of empire and from the Black and the femme and attuned to the digitality of all diasporas. Gracias por todo. Amram also played with Tito Puente and Thelonious Monk, and we have our own percussive poetics to embody, our synapses to signify, nothing in partículas. Digital Diasporas is in that video of you looping the Promesa bill into unrecognizability. I tried to center your doing, your embracing, ambient sound and silence as I took the video amid the Bronx summer noise and children at the community garden with its modest casita surviving somehow the way the Bronx always does, por siempre, para siempre, showing us the way. Please feature more Bronx artists, Brooklyn Rail. That was not in the original text, but we have to improvise. The way you read the text, I realized the only kind of appropriation I want is the unappropriately fitting one, not contained by the institution, emerging from below. No bottom shaming in my flow, no top fronting. I mentioned to you the brew hex, brujeria beyond gender norms, but also the brew hex of your erasures, knocked as in never, knocked out as in no city, no city, sin ciudad, except the city of sin, queer magic, no promesa, citizenship, actually against an art that promises, always delivering compromises and verbal violences. Another video was sharing space in that birding afternoon, and I tried to become the catbird's meow after losing my way uptown and in Central Park. Thank you for showing me another center, another possible park, another green space of the spirit. How do you do it? How do you re-embody so many diasporas into the centralist green, into the hum space of songs plural? Sigo definiéndome desde eso, even amid the construction here in Rio Piedras. I tell you the gringo investors are everywhere, and I guess I'm half one, so I'm working it through. Bienvenidos a las contradicciones del arte del imperio digital. Construction of meaning, it's there in your work. down to the studs of the house. How terrifying, how necessary. Thank you for helping me work through the space of home as haunted, not fetishizing it like migrant formations of yore, but digging deep, nos dijo Schomburg, against the archival grain, along the archival grain. There is no diasporic archive, solo el cuerpo, la cuerpa, le cuerpes. Thank you for disaggregating all that for me. And finally, I'll say something to a poet I'll admit I didn't prepare for, because their art is unpreparedness. I'm guessing improvisation is their nation too, o algo así. But in lieu of that, a story, un cuento. That time in the far west when we went to lunch and I admitted, almost like coming out in a different kind of perverse pride, my almost abject love of thrift stores and its connection to mi abuela, the second hands, the flea markets, the whole thing. And you told me, with a kind of clarity I still aspire to, I'm into statement pieces. Something like, I'd rather pool my resources and get a statement piece. And so here's to a poetics of statement in pieces, improvised, the only way we make meaning. I saw you do it en las calles de Latinoamérica, esa Latinoamérica tan poco blanca. How did we settle on that? Why do we keep settling? And what would it mean to imagine an art that unsettles? Thank you for doing that for so long. Thank you for embracing improvisation as the only nation. And I could say a little bit more, but a little bit. I think books are boring us now. If anybody is still tuning in to Okay, if we have any audience left here after that, it is proof that digital diasporas find their way. So thank you all, poetas, the ways in which your work is sustaining and defining. So let's start it off. Let me shut up and let the poetas do their thing. We're starting it off with the wondrous Joey De Jesus, and Joey asked me to be minimal in my introduction, so I'll just say repping queer New York, repping the Bronx, and also poetry as performance, as activism, as political engagement of the highest order. Un fuerte aplauso digital para Joey De Jesus.
Thank you, Ura. That was amazing. I'm in awe of your ability and musicality and sound, and that was so wonderful. Thank you. Let's see. I'm really excited to be, it's always so strange. I still haven't quite attuned to sitting in, like, you know, I'm in my office. But I'm not just in my office. I wanted to live constellate a decolonized sky, but the witch's charm chalks what's above in surveillance. Today I'm gonna read 5 poems. I don't know if you can really see it, but it's all right. The witch's charm chalks what's above in surveillance. So today it's just gonna be 5 poems. Each one takes its name from a star. And these are waypoints to discord. You know, we're talking about, you know, Ura's right. I do rep the Bronx because I'm from the Bronx originally. But when I ran for office on a platform that poetry belongs in the people's house, I ran for state assembly. I was running to rep Queens, which has taken me in, and I love Queens. But I do love the Bronx as well. So 5 poems. Atlas. I was a bad student of Blanquitec's tongue. The threat, narcissistic beyond compare, a child, the similitude of magma. Interested in soot and gum rearguard. I was kindling re-engineered into smoke column, what far-off fires raised into bronchial clog like a perfect poison, shattering fortitudes. They said, cloister a moment, quiet, sit quay side awaiting quaesida in subordinate condition. I said soul, eater openly wants, smell of onions in another's sweat. I hidden the pretenses of English, gate crashing, the threshold between violence and the episteme where experience and knowledge take place. 9 swords stop not my speech act, because I refuse to listen to a syllable from my orphan condition. Altair, another star. My computer's giving me it's hot noise, which makes me worried I'm gonna
Because the poet's hot. The poetry's hot.
Well, oh, thank you. But I hope it doesn't. Hope I don't lag. But it's also, you know what? It's fine. The spirits be interrupting. So if they feel the need to shut me up, then okay. Altair, yes, I meditated upon the donkey colt, dark, flexing lights from pleasure, twisting the little of my mind. No negotiating with one who inflicts harm upon others. A winged mongrel torn between above and below, I went and fell with love for reading, like ironclad condor rider of ruling radix, fanatical for wind polity. I eagled in threes at water's edge, ambition and worldly powers trying, stretched my span long, rise of gentle fullness, raised the black march of warrior. A brocade industry of nebula in constant conception, a regimen to manger life in the air's error as leopard-bodied eagle, firstborn in times of misfortune. This one is awry, but it's really more about how we name hurricanes as a way of the practice of naming hurricanes, compartmentalizes, historicizes. But I've always believed that, the hurricane, Wabanse is the name of the hurricane. And so it always feels like an infringement to just give these colonial names to a force that, we're entering hurricane season now. So let me do this to keep them at bay. I want to make sure I'm on camera. Am I good? Only a few more. Bear with me, please. Lit as I twirl, dip adrift, staunch, rogue, irate, and stomping such kiln, such rage and strange nana. Whose legacy flash floods sick the ink dead within you? Who struts a knit of fishy throat and hollowed turtles, squalling titi that clam sweat? Steer away, men of salt. If I've ever had lips, let them falcon and shriek. At work, at work on a water spout, water against water, a whale world all white ring. I said, fuck the hard hand of landfall. In swelling currents, taste my symmetry. Rain ripens the sour sop. Lord, here, I will sink every buoy. Flaunt each like a corpse shark charm. I will scatter across your city, a wave of widening wilderness. If gravestone face, then clot that would be leaflet, then clypeus that would be cluster. With one flap of my iguaca wing, your priests will give it the knees and I will be renamed. Alioth. A trembling creature hunched, salting meats. I charcoaled vanilla the chicken liver, fetching my finest brew to honor my diet. I steep a broth of bones, pot frothing a delicious squall, slurp genepa in a hidden hot spot beneath Alioth, so my marrow remembers nothing erroneous about me. Suck the spatula, damn near drawing vomit, medium of sweet speak. I once buried an icon and pissed in the form of a cross. Seba child demands its shaggy sibling eke from their cave to render awful, offal traces asunder quiring and test talents against immortals of the sun. And last one, because I know I'm up on time. Dabe. Hyena ink, monkey goblin of the language arts, curled in writing cursive, leveling severe letters, a lowland wet kukul cave, cursed panoply of I forget, bruhex, bruhaha, like a new annexing a rex ha. I was casting sewage in baboon time, nostalgic for the Cretan sounds, larval in the avatar vault where matter organizes. To effect an adagial binding of tongues, I harassed the always a corruption of thought, quality the intention of choice, work for ward, gathering together to pen name anemone, amen. Thank you, Ura, and thank you, Brooklyn Rail. I hope you caught all that and I didn't break out.
Thank you, Joey de Jesus. Give them the big digital hand. Woo! Fabulous, Joey, gracias. And yes to the Bruhex, siempre. And what a perfect segue to the mighty LaTasha N. Nevada Diggs, who is a writer, vocalist, and performance sound artist, and is the author of the by now legendary TwERK. Diggs has presented and performed at California Institute of the Arts and Museo del Barrio, MoMA, and Walker Center, and numerous festivals, and is an incredible independent curator who's presented events for BAMCafé, Black Rock Coalition, Museo del Barrio, Lincoln Center Out of Doors, and the David Rubenstein Atrium. And Diggs has received the 2020 CD Wright Award for poetry from the Foundation of Contemporary Art, a Whiting Award, and a National Endowment for the Arts Literature Fellowship, as well as grants and fellowships from Cave Canem, Creative Capital, NYFA, and the U.S. Japan Friendship Commission, among others. And I'll say on a personal level, LaTasha has been showing me what it means to live Los Nueva Yorkes and Harlem in particular as many kinds of spaces, right? Diasporic space, indigenous space, digital space, and again, the green inside and out that I shared in my piece. So, otro fuerte aplauso digital para LaTasha N. Nevada Diggs.
Thank you, guys. So, Ura, as always, thank you. It's so great to be part of this gathering. Yara, it's so wonderful to meet you. I can't wait to hear your work. Joey, my baby, it's so good to see you. And Ronaldo, as always, love you dearly. So let me try to make this happen because it is hot in New York and the AC, I'm trying not to kill the AC. So let's see. Can y'all hear that? Can y'all hear that?
Yeah.
This is my little drum set. Let's go. O número total de niñas pasos en the Bronx. Watashi no stepu no so su Harlem. El número total de mis pasos en Helmond. Watashi no stepu no so su nishi ogi kubo. O número total de niñas pasos en North Carolina. Watashi no stepu no so su Okinawa. El número total de mis pasos en San Salvador de Bahía. Watashi no stepu no so su Tasco. O número total de niñas pasos en Chalagi. Watashi no stepu no so su Vandase. El número total de mis traspos en Ile Yoruba. Let's play a game. First step, wife or wet nurse, heathered fragrance of breast milk or perfume, whose ginger curly Q crush shoguns, whom is worth study, umebioshi kyoe, pursed cheeks, flushed, freckled, unsought. Laws crash verse, nutmeg, copper, fleck, hint of Maranthe. Mamushi Christian for baby daddy. Exchange facades on a fan-shaped island. Oddities, neither skilled nor courtesan almonds, who received clover, astrolabs, lacquer, kohi. Drops among you, sweet rice, speckled Asian. Did honor let the boy pick up Nihongo? A single vase might have stored cane Izine. Cherries for the daughter, what for the Jawa go? What for the Jawa go? Okay, let's be totally silly now. I kept on looking at this poem and I said, you know what? I'm going to invoke one of the voices. Me and Ura always likes to hear me imitate because I do it so good. So I'm reading a poem called Caterpillar in the voice, and try to guess the voice. I won't say the voice, but it's in homage to her voice. So it's not at all meant to be mocking. LaTasha. Caterpillars and grief, the screech of some 40 girls masking the seer's anguish during future masquerades towards the La Maqueta on park, on thin webs the lava break, free fall, minor safety inside the training bra, sweat, webbed feathers, mushrooms to accidentally pupate. Whelp. The squeals of puberty led to their massacre. Splat, aquamarine erupts out, black, red fuzz, ectoplasmic. A boy's savagery plays out on the bottom of his K-Swiss. Hulk smash, Hulk smash. The transfer that massacre to the streets of Harlem. Split, cracked skulls, rip, beauty gods. The rights that make right. Boys to men, some safer passage. Soft for the black carbon law widows. Digress, journey to the bottom of Bear Mountain's pool. Between wormholes, a girl is dancing with her eyes closed beneath the surf. Which way is up? Distancing downward, is there any oozing bioluminescence that might ignite a flight? Mechanical tidal waves are so unfair, the arms untrained in all wrong directions, until a hand reaches out, pulls her up and out. Sun's getting low, sun's gonna go down. If ever a man did save her life, it was here, never again. The New Guard. Warning, this contains strong language. Warning, this contains some sexual thematic themes about rape. Warning, this contains graphic material. Warning, this contains descriptions of sexual assault. Warning, this contains bodily fluids. Warning, this contains parental negligence. Warning, this contains peer pressure. Warning, this contains descriptions of bully culture. Warning, this contains vulgar language. Warning, this contains descriptions of pedophilia. Warning, this contains self-hatred. Warning, this contains admissions and allegations. Warning, This contains minor and gross embellishments. This contains graphic depictions of domestic violence. This contains expletives. Warning. Warning, this contains episodes of suicidal ideation. Warning, this contains language some readers may find offensive. In order to disregard protecting the identity of the people mentioned, all names of personages and places have not been altered. Danke.
Mic drop from LaTasha N, Nevada Diggs. Digital aplausos, everybody. Wow, and I guess we can say CV to identify our beloved and admired elder. We need to give a shout out to CV, whose work continues to inspire us and is the spirit of radical poetry. Gracias, LaTasha, that was amazing. It is my joy and privilege now to introduce Yara Liceaga-Rojas, who's a queer Afro-Caribbean mother, poet, writer, performer, cultural worker, and educator, born in Puerto Rico and currently living in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Her projects revolve around origin, gender, race, class, longing, loss, effective labor, and the visibility of marginalized subjects. She's the author of 5 books of poetry, including Hacernos el Adios from Instituto de Cultura Puertorriqueña 2019, and Acentos Espesos, Thick Accents, Taller Mujer Orquesta 2018, recipient of the New England Foundation for the Arts Creative City 2018 grant. And she is co-founder, curator, and coordinator of the multidisciplinary artist performance series, Poetry is Busy, which I shouted out in my introduction and to which I am so indebted and was so groundbreaking, especially in these very white, very straight, right, very male-dominated spaces. It gave so many of us so much freedom. On a personal note, I'll tell a short story. I first became aware of Yara Liceaga-Rojas when I was curating an event bringing together poets from Puerto Rico and the diaspora as a grad student at NYU in 2003. And I remember wanting to find a younger poet and asking the great writer Mayra Santos Febres, and Mayra recommending Yara to me. So I like to shout out Mayra Santos Febres as an elder. Mayra's book of poems, Boat People, finally got translated by Vanessa Perez Rosario. So also shouting out the generations, right, of folks fighting, right, to diversify Boricua arts and letters and culture from within. And so if it weren't for that initial contact, I would have not have connected so quickly to one of my favorite poetas, and Yara has been one of my favorite poetas ever since. And yes, I'm still thinking about those email spam poems, right, that felt like they were scrambling and remapping digital space effectively, y con toda la belleza y lo infinitamente cool de quien eres, Yara. Así que, sin más preámbulos, un fuertísimo aplauso digital para Yara Liceaga-Rojas.
Wow, gracias. Y gracias a Mayra, un shout out a Mayra por making this right now possible en aquel momento. Bueno, I'm gonna do a poetic corte de pastelillo. And I'm gonna share my screen so that everyone can access what I'm going to be sharing with you today. Bueno, this is from the book Hacernos el Adios. Ensalada de cebollas. Había como un grito de luz en la boca abierta de la mañana, aquel día definitivo que logró despertarme de un cantazo. La claridad del día estaba regada por la habitación. La sentí meterse debajo de la cama como un susurro. Su pasta luminosa, casi táctil, comenzó a emplastar las paredes, rellenó los muebles de resplandor, llegando hasta donde yacía dormida. Me despegó los párpados con la brusquedad que cargan por dentro las decisiones fulminantes. Era abril, o quizás era mayo, pero estaba claro que abrir los ojos y saber que ya no habría manera de idear solución era una cosa que me sobrepasaba. Puerto Rico comenzaría a ser un pasado desde entonces. Aquella luz voluntariosa y tropical no la volvería a repetir mi contacto visual con el presente. Las maneras de recobrar aquella intromisión lumínica que adoraba desde mi niñez y me hacía sentir tan a gusto como un hogar eran tan brumosas e inaccesibles que la mañana me estaba hiriendo con la revelación del futuro que comenzaba a gestarse. Partir era la idea audible, palpable ante los años anteriores que comenzaron lentamente a encaramarse unos sobre otros en la memoria. La precariedad rebanaba como pieles traslúcidas, formando una encima de la próxima, densos recuerdos que tomaban la decisión de presentarse en la forma dura en que se manifiesta el dolor. Lo más claro era que sobrevivir ya no era posible. Sobrevivir. Un trabajo que asegura unos mínimos a una madre, jefa de familia, multípara. Mínimos. Renta, servicios básicos, educación, alimentos que se pudieran pagar. Abrí los ojos de súbito. Nos vamos, dije. Me dije. Nos vamos significaba 7 trajes, 7 pantalones, 7 faldas, toda la ropa interior que pude, 3 pares de zapatos, la misma cantidad de piezas para la hija y el hijo que trasladaba a otra realidad, otro contexto cultural, otro desarrollo en 2 maletas en total. La liviandad del vuelo, el peso de dejar incrustadas en el aire que poblaba la casa todas las vivencias, además de los cientos de documentos que formaban nuestra historia familiar, el papel de las vacunas, los certificados de nacimiento de cada quien, las tarjetas de seguro social, los pasaportes viajaron con nosotros. Un viaje de ida a casa de mi hermana, 2 manuscritos de una cubana y una poeta boricuas, un libro de ensayos, el peluche de Sol, 2 juguetes de Elías, la imposibilidad del regreso. La hija mayor que se queda. La hija mayor que se queda. Parte de la ropa que quedó se la llevó Michelle un día. Todos los documentos de los pasados 39 años que tenía en la última casa que viví del archipiélago rompieron a implorar que los llevara. No era posible. Gran parte de mi biblioteca se la comió María un año más tarde. Cada vez que veía una foto de Michelle con alguna de mis piezas, me enternecía el detalle, me entusiasmaba la belleza que germinaba en el reuso. Cuando pude tener acceso visual a través de fotos o videos a los libros y documentos que perdí después de que los vientos y la lluvia arrancaran las puertas del cuarto donde descansaban, hubo partes de mi interior que se fueron horadando, como si cargara un espíritu de óxido que cede ante el salitre. En los huecos reservados para entumecer, metí todo lo que activaba mi incredulidad. No era mucho lo que podía hacer. De hecho, no podía hacer nada más que hacerles el adiós de manera silenciosa, íntima, como el cuerpo dentro del ataúd bajando hacia su entierro. Amé a todo lo que despedía desde esa mañana, con la calma de quien cura la carne expuesta en un cuerpo parcialmente desollado, con una esperanza torcida y entregada. Decidir partir es comenzar a vestir otra piel, otro cuerpo, una categoría con la cual nunca se había uno manifestado como ser social, cambiar de olor, blanquecer de frío. Everything leaves, todo se va. Este poema, this poem was published in Puerto Rico en mi corazón. If you have the chance, please get it. Okay. If my voice cracks, pichén. Mara regresaba cuando nos fuimos filtrando hacia la boca del gotero, el desparrame al cual caer. Salíamos con los ojos recorriendo el asombro y nos costaba ponernos de pie haciéndonos la sombra, haciendo de cuerpo el reflejo del otro. Lindas formas de animal agrietado, donde anclarse a pensar que la estrategia sería agrisar el café para normalizar un poco el color de los días. Que la estrategia seria es un baño de sol en tu compañía. Dejo al viento enredarme el camino, con el brazo en la ladera de cuero de la puerta, y me pregunto, ¿cómo se despide uno? ¿Cómo decir adiós, vida mía? A la caricia picante del trayecto, de este diálogo azul e íntimo con el horizonte, que está troceado y me ofreces, como el desayuno que sale de tus manos a la mañana siguiente, una que reconoce que la nutrición viene empacada en la ternura, o en aquella parte en donde el mundo reconoce la palabra nuca, y yo no hacerme la pendeja. Porque ese es el lugar de la certidumbre, escondido el aroma en esa zona en donde la liviandad se asienta y sonríe. Y este calor lo que hace es que se me escurran las maneras de pegar una palabra a otra. Este calor me hace desdecir. Así que paladeo la distancia con una mueca de que voy a llorar, de ola en ola, enmarejada. Junto los párpados para que me entiendas mejor, y hago como el acto del chamán que desaparece a la inversa. Me destrenzo por dentro. Abro la quijada y el sudor, agua y palabra se desprenden y se compactan, sonoridad de almendra sobre el pavimento. Noto que hablo tranquilamente del futuro, como forrado de cristales de azúcar, pero tú sabes que es solo hielo multiforme y te conmueve. Así que sacas la mano para despedirte y yo desenfundo el cariño para dejarte pegade en todas las memorias de la palabra solaz que se sueltan por dentro. Recuerdos emplumados que observan el mundo, posaditos en la cablería del querer, tendido ecléctico, por donde viaja lo que le da luz a nuestro andar, como en el video de Michael Jackson. Por eso, hundo la mano hasta tocar el botón de entumecer, endurecer la trama hasta que pese lo suficiente para abandonarla en el exacto lugar de difícil regreso, acceso controlado por los signos del hartazgo, que son las migajas con las que se construyen figuritas de pan que reflejan los hologramas del hambre para no desfallecer. Un pobre deseo como único alimento, ilusión óptica, que rasgan los días en su temperamento. ¿Ya te vas?, pregunta el país, como si lo escribiera para que no le noten la entonación y pueda seguir como ahora, de pie, sonora, materia. Intento pues quedarme con todo. Practico calladas despedidas que ninguno advierte. Me voy destroyer contra la tarde, a fragmentarme. Me dejan en cantitos los colores de la topografía celeste, deshaciéndome sin que nadie lo note, para unirme más adelante recogiendo la calidez del momento, la energía que se desprende de los objetos que nos circundan, de nosotros mientras conversamos, del tiempo, de este espacio de tierra que amamos hasta el adiós. Decir adiós, yo digo, en los poemas en ciudad. Decir adiós, vida mía. No basta con decirlo, como el amor, hay que hacerlo. Entonces, tú recoges cada fragmento a distancia y aseguras sobre el aire con la voz aquellos versos de Mara que dicen: aquí te cuerpo. Gracias.
Beautiful, Yara. Aquí te cuerpo. Wow, powerhouse. Yara, Mara. I love the poetic constellation of voices, including the constellation of translators. So shout out to Sabrina Ramos Rubén, Raquel Salas Rivera for those really, really powerful translations. Y gracias, Yara, for the beauty and fearlessness of your work siempre. Un abrazo. So, okay, everybody, last but not least, we are excited to introduce Ronaldo V Wilson, who is an interdisciplinary artist, poet, and scholar, PhD, and the author of Narrative of the Life of the Brown Boy and the White Man, the iconic poems of the Black Object, Farther Traveler, Poetry, Prose, Other, and has forthcoming Wilson's Carmelina Figures and Virgil Kills Stories. Wilson is a recipient of fellowships from Cave Canem, Kundiman, McDowell, the Center for Art and Thought, and the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation. He is professor of creative writing and literature at UC Santa Cruz, Califas in the House, serving on the core faculty of the Creative Critical Program and principal faculty of Critical Race and Ethnic Studies. So, un fuerte abrazo para el gran Ronaldo Wilson!
Laura, thank you for. Can you hear me? I have always had issues with. Hello, that I don't even know what to say. I'm just going to say I'm stunned by all of the work that I heard. Ura, thanks for curating and bringing us together, and Malvika, Brooklyn Rail, and I cannot wait to be in conversation with all of you, Joey, LaTasha, and Yara, around those works. So I am going to stumble my way through something because I am exhausting any treatment of the poem for now, for 8 minutes, to see what happens.
Really? Yeah, really. Last time I checked it. Oh. Are you sure you checked it well enough? You had your right vision? You had your right vision and you had your right mind, didn't it? It could be true. Let me look one more time. Well, where are you going to look? Well, look to see if that's it. You have to check his ID. Oh my goodness. They're gone. It's too late to check. Oh. Now they appear because today's Theo's birthday. Oh. You forgot, huh? You know I did. We had been forgetting their birthdays since they grown up. Yeah, that's because we're too old. We're too old to remember. I don't even remember Ronaldo's birthday. But that guy always reminds us about his birthday. Who does? Ronaldo. Okay. He doesn't remember about all of them. He don't remember us about all of them. Oh, I remember Ronaldo. And Donaldo is June. I mean, darn if I remember. They're in their 50s, aren't they? Yeah, this was 84. Oh my goodness. Oh my. I got married when I was 21. Who did you marry? You didn't tell me. I got married in one of the little churches, long ago. I didn't say where, I said who. Who? Who did you marry? The lame person I'm talking to. That's who I got married. I got caught. I'm not fast enough to run or smart enough to run faster. I maintain the same speed. That's what happened. I know it now. Now that we're 84, I can't walk anymore. Well, you going faster than I am. No, I've been in the wheelchair. No. Gio pushes me in the wheelchair when I go see you. Yeah, but at least you get up to see me anyway. Yeah.
I had a proposal to move around the arousal. I have an occasion to move inside of the shellac. I have the gift of having concise parental units. I'll do due diligence to render myself back without a beat, though I've recorded a bass line. I want to move slowly inside of the improvisational wiring. These are not the synapses, but somewhere behind language. Lately, I've been swimming almost every day, so I thought that I would show you my clavicle, which is my radical intervention. I won't show you my father's kidneys because they're not quite working. But I know my husband's knees will because they've been replaced last night. I've been hovering around a hospital. It's not so impossible to think about Ura's call into the hum space. Nevada's improvisatory encounter toward Cecilia's, not the hum, but the whirring, the shivering, whisper in the voice. Yara, I'm stunned by how you're moving mobilities, particularly around the relationship with the reserve for the hollow. How do we carry forth the thing that we're missing? I thought about 4 suites that I changed my voice up, and I thought, here's the crescendo. I'll stop here and ask myself, I want to shift gears now. What I'm employing right now is decent. Ura talked earlier about convention. It was a little bit shady. Did you hear that stutter? It was a little bit meticulous, the call to say this is the voice to which we're employing the poetic hand, the monotone surface. I want to switch back and move into another register. I haven't practiced singing, but I'll try it. I want to ask you all about timing. Do I be the person who I say, how am I doing on time?
3 minutes.
Almost, going, it stays there for a long time. Oh, that's what that is. Yeah. I still got that thing now. Yeah, that's when they just take your blood out from there. I didn't know that's what that was. Oh, the doctor should explain it to you. I forgot it because probably I didn't like it. No, you won't feel the pain. I know. You were just sleeping.
Okay, so this little piece is called dialysis. Dialysis is my vibrationist. It's so impetuous to not hold forth inside of the senses, which doesn't count the mobility behind my movement and my eye, because I've got to stay somewhere. Let's transpose the scar on my father's kidney, which has to be biopsied, and my mother who's in a wheelchair, and we're rolling up to the hospital. They give us 30 minutes. You've given me 3. I have a relationship between freedom, although it's porous. I don't know what to have in front of me, but I don't have a thesaurus. Somehow in the measurements of the banks inside of my mind, there's a wellspring, not after Sharon, but I'm sharing you some kind of, not the panoply, but the impossibility of what makes it feel so impossibly not fragmented, but segmented. The 3rd quarter, the last 3 minutes. The shot will arc through the air of what is so conceived to be not a hairline. I'm dragging you. I'm dragging the impossible, not the impossible, but the not the possible, but it is right. It is the implicit. Although I like to spit this because it's so convenient to move between the I forms, the I is actually forming, as you said, in the spiral of found banked shells in the middle of the beach on the LI, Long Island Sound, so that I can find myself not wavering behind the sciatica that wounds me. So yes, I get up in the middle of the stretch, and yes, you get up in the middle of the trench, and yes, you get into the trench to say this is the receiving area of not the rhyme scheme. This is not the implicit bovine. I'm feeling a little fat today. Shall I show you my muscle, or shall I show you a tumor? Do you want to watch me flex for the last 2 seconds? There's got to be 30 seconds left. I will end with this last gesture to you, to my father, to the hope that they are as strong as my shell. Thank you.
Woo!
Wow.
Ronaldo V Wilson. All I can say to that is, can I spot you? You know. So HMU, if I can spot you, and we can take it from there. Okay, folks, that was incredible. Please, can we all unmute ourselves and just give now some audible digital love for all 4 readers, Joey, LaTasha, Yara, and Ronaldo.
Let's give a feedback, Mark. Thank you, everyone.
And Cecilia.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ronaldo. Thank you, Joey. Thank you, LaTasha. Thank you, Yara. Hi, all. And of course, thank you to you, Ura, for bringing us all together, for bringing us into such a deep nation of improvisation. And thank you for opening up the space. I feel like originally we had the idea to have like a little bit of crosstalk here, or some questions come in. Is that still of interest, or shall we go straight to the crescendo? How are you feeling?
Yeah, let's do that. I think I thought we could do a little group improvisation, but after that, I'm not sure how we can.
Everyone's I think that's fair. I will say also, so this was so magical. Thank you so much. As always, we'll share the recording of today's reading on our archives as well as on YouTube, so it will be available in a day or two if you'd like to revisit this magical space. And please join us again tomorrow for a second Publishing in Transit, a new series we kicked off just last month where we take deep dives into different small presses and the publishing industry. Tomorrow we'll be joined by poet and founding editor of Tender Buttons Press, Leanne Brown, alongside 2 of her authors, Anne Waldman and Lucia Hinojosa Gaxiola. That will be, as always, at 1 p.m. right here in the Zoom. Other than that, thank you all so much. You all already have the ability to turn on your mics at will, so I sort of cede the space if you would like to say hello to one another, goodbye on your way out, or anything else that compels you. But thank you so much. This was wild.
Yeah, just know I had invited folks, the performers, to say something about their work and to frame it, but I feel like so many folks' work was already, right, kind of framing itself, right, through its own embodiment. So maybe take up one question to not take up people's time.
You want to ask? Okay, so I have a question I could ask if everyone is open. But if there are questions that come in from the audience, feel free. Okay, brilliant. I think I misunderstood when you said move on. Well, I had a question I would love to ask, which is that I was so compelled by this idea of moving in between decipherable and indecipherable languages. You know, this idea, I couldn't stop thinking about, LaTasha, what you had said on Monday about attending this talk where the speakers had an antenna and the on-site interpretation was going on with headphones of so many languages just live. And there's so much, you know, so many of you are making choices, not just in how to read, but how to frame, how to speak, how to interact with one another between Spanish and English. And Yara, the deliberate choice to have sort of the English translation, but not to have it read, to have them simultaneously, and how that reading allows that gap where you have the musicality in the poesis of the writing, but also the space of alienation to let people who are just reading the English know that they're missing something. I was also thinking like about how improvisation is kind of a language with a limited shelf life, like it can't travel, it's untranslatable, but to honor it is to honor fidelity to a source language. And I was wondering if you could all talk a little bit about like that decision on how to present the translation or how to deal with language, because you all have such unique takes.
I can start from a curatorial perspective. I mean, I think I'm big on not getting hung up on like English and Spanish as a binary in my own work, especially as these are kind of languages of empire, and thinking more about, you know, vernaculars, right? Languages of the everyday, and how in someone like Yara's work so powerfully, right? Those pieces are also documentations of like everyday life and everyday being in the world and questions about embodiment. And so, you know, a lot of us are making choices about that all the time, not just in terms of English and Spanish or official languages, but just how to translate the kind of you know, everyday embodiment that is beyond language, right, into something that is institutionally recognizable as art, right? And I feel like that's a pressure, right? Whether it's art spaces or universities, right? You're expected to have a little blurb at the bottom that explains in English, right, to a kind of imaginary monolingual, right, educated reader, exactly what you're doing in ways that fit in to these codes. So for me, you know, improvising is bringing language closer to my body and closer to a kind of untranslatability that resists the urge, because I have a PhD and because I work inside all those spaces, right, to over curate, right, over explain, invest with a kind of surplus of cultural capital, right, work that I think is coming from you know, from living in the everyday and trying to honor the value just of what's in those everyday practices. So thinking of vernaculars versus, right, kind of you know, languages of empire or official languages or something like that. That's from my perspective.
I'd love to pass it to Joey. I feel like you do a really interesting thing with like moving in between language, and kind of like the performative elements seem to like carry that a little bit for you.
Yeah, I'm still sort of thinking about, yeah, I'm still thinking about how to like frame a response, because, you know, on the one hand, I have like that map that that I don't know if you could really see it, but, you know, they're sigils. And I've been doing a lot of like sigil writing lately. And, you know, that really, those characters are only, you know, intelligible to me. But there's still something to the markings and yeah, so I've just been thinking a lot about, these questions, and I don't really have much of an answer. You know, when I perform, I didn't perform today with, you know, the sound equipment. But yeah, I like to distort my voice. If only, this isn't really an answer to the question, but if only to underscore the lengths of dehumanization. You know, I've encountered, you know, just even performing a poem before a stage where it feels very confessional. You know, it feels like a divulgence, or this sort of weird sort of, it's very, I don't know, standing at a podium and delivering a reading. There's something very religious to me about that, and it's unsettling. So, you know, I just think about distorting my voice and incorporating these loops and echoes, and to demonstrate something I think true about the piece, and how I approached it, feeling like I need, like it's a deracination of form. I have to literally deracinate. I mean, I have to distort my voice to it till it becomes almost alien sounding, just to show that the work on the page is legible. That's it's ironic. It's like the voice. It's a strange sort of tension when I distort the voice, but to prove that this text, if without that, stands as a poem, is a poem, and yeah. So there's like, I could keep blathering, but these are my thoughts.
I do want to say that for me, the Spanish-English battle, it's sort of like, it's a political battle, and because I was thrown away from Puerto Rico because of the dire situation, economic situation, and so I came here with a language tantrum. Like, I use Spanish as a means to, really push audiences to engage with a poem in a different way, at a different level. And at the same time, at the beginning, when I as soon as I came here, I used only Spanish readings. I did Spanish readings, and then I started noticing how many people I left out of the experience of the word. And then in an effort to include, not exclude, ¿verdad? Porque I was thinking specifically about white estadounidense people. And I was like, no, I don't want them to understand, pero es que it's not only white estadounidense people that speak Spanish, English. So trying to include everyone, even my people, and my people meaning mothers, and my people meaning queer and trans people, and my people meaning Black folks or Afro-Caribbean folks, light, dark, medium dark, and all the skin colors. And also diaspora members. It's a way to, add them to not only the way that words kind of, ¿cómo se dice? Me poseen, like take possession of my body and my movements. Not only that, but at the same time have, a wide array, I think. I always Spanglish, I'm sorry. I try to translate live translation in my head, and sometimes I can't. But, widen the way that people could access the work I do, because it's very difficult to translate. I've been told that many, many times because I use a lot of, tú sabes, like phrases and cultural references and whatnot. And that is very different to translate. And I do it very on purpose, and also trying to find a way to gather the most people, así se dice, como gather everyone. So yeah, so I think that's that.
I think that's fantastic. I'm also so intrigued by this thing you were saying about, I love that language tantrum and the expansion. Sorry, I'm going to jump around a little bit, but Joey, this word deracination, right? That it's deracinating the language, deracinating the voice. And it made me think, to deracinate is to sort of uproot someone from their natural environment. And I was thinking about something my friend said to me recently, which is that, there's such a high population of Puerto Ricans in New York that you could think about it almost as an island in diaspora. You could think about it as an adjacent part of the land, which I think of as like a really beautiful concept. I know we have just a few minutes left, but I'd love to hear from the rest of us. Ronaldo, if you have any thoughts, LaTasha. If not, we can close it out.
Go ahead, Tasha.
Sure. Can I just share something very quickly? I'm going to do a quick video share. Hold on a second, just making sure that I have the right video.
So we got this gangster ass duck, right, that really needs to go back in the water, but has figured out that folks feed. And so now this baby insists on going gangster on the nuts. But, you know, yes, that's right. Get the pigeon out. Get out. Get out. You ain't supposed to be here. Why you keep following me, dog? That's right. That's right. Get him out of here. Get him out of here. Yeah, see? See? Duck ain't scared of no squirrel, yo. Look at that. Look at that. Get the squirrel up on the log. Can you be my friend? Can you?
Okay, so what does it have to do with any of this? I don't speak duck. And one of the joys and frustrations of going out in the park is being frustrated by humans who think that wildlife understands them. And how about just being quiet? So those are one of the rare occasions that you actually see me talking to a duck. I don't normally talk to ducks, nor do I talk to the catbirds or the robins. I just go out there and be silent and let them talk amongst themselves. It's not my place. It's their place. I'm a guest in their environment. Now, what does it have to do with this question pertaining to language? Well, particularly the first one was this curiosity of being in a place in Europe and realizing that as a New Yorker, as an urban person, I've been privileged to overhearing a lot of languages and would naturally assume that you would hear that all the time anywhere you go, when in fact, that particular poem, which was written in Leeuwarden, in like northern area of the Netherlands, regardless of how many minority communities you would see in the environment, no one is speaking what you would assume or speculate to be their heritage languages, their mother languages. And that has to do with the system, right? That has to do with what is required in that particular nation, in that country, to become a citizen. And so you don't hear Vietnamese, you don't hear Egyptian Arabic, you don't hear Somali, you just hear Dutch all the time. And you see all of these people. And so so for me, I think I'm always listening to what's, I'm always overhearing, I'm always eavesdropping on all of these languages I hear. And I've, with the exception of Spanish, I've taken a position which is similar to my position when I go out in the woods. I don't need to understand all of these languages, and it's fine, you know. Also, it's a position of being like both humble, but also taking down the ego, shall we say. So yeah, I don't speak duck.
I love that. I don't either. I will just say that in terms of the question of translation, I believe that is it for me, and I think to understand the difference between engaging in the work as an artist and as a poet. And as an artist, I mean, I use those categories heavily only for the sake of outlining the conversation that or the observation that I would like to make. That I think the artificial characteristics of sculpture or painting are just as malleable for me as rendering and language. But I think the difficult question for me is how do we figure out, or how do we, as all of you are talking about, and I think as LaTasha is really pointing out, how do we deal with the relationship with making palpable the unknowing? The unknowing as a feature that has to happen outside of any form of comprehension. The artificiality of a reading is not as urgent as not knowing whether or not my father will live for a certain amount of days. How is it as an artist that I gain the competency to understand that universal language when any animal might understand death and understand the fragility of one's skin if we're being attacked by a lion, or by about being in New York City? I'm so moved to be back in this company, because I realized that so much of this reading has to do with heat, with temperature or cooling. Where are we? Is the AC on? What's the light like? I just feel the sweat in it. And I realized as a young adult in my 20s, I came to consciousness in New York City as a graduate student in the program. And I think that language of a kind of desperation, God knows it was a great advantaged position to be in, rendering a PhD, working as an artist, cruising, all of these impossible relationships between language, deferral, and possibility maybe had everything to do with the fact that I don't know my mother's language, which is Tagalog. But the pursuit of Tagalog, I think, is a form that I'm able to pursue in the university setting through grants or whatever as a discourse. But I think the question that we're talking about, that you're all making me think about, is how do we not only understand how to make palpable the impossible, but how do we render the exilic? And what is the relationship between the exilic figure, those who are exiled, those who want to sort of move? And I'll just say some frames for this performance. I'm working on 2 books. I'm clearly invested in prose. I'm working on a dissertation. I'm writing all of these letters. Every day I'm rendering in this language. But at this moment, I just wanted to sit with these Polaroids and think about what it meant to move between the Polaroid and the shell, and it gave me some ideas about how I want to render and write into another surface that has nothing to do with any of the kind of formal practices of which I'm trained, but the urgencies of which I think I want to say the word called, but I just feel like something else is happening, that's not being called to it, the kind of, it's hunger, right? I think there's something extremely that I need, a sort of nutrient right now. And that, I mean, I can put on the artificiality of a language and learn it and move in it. But I think I'm just right now meditating on the relationship between, what happens between, I spend a lot of time being deliberate about soaking these shells and not using bleach, and trying to find a natural soap to not kill the kind of lichen or whatever it is on here. But I'm painting on these now. I'm writing on these things right now for this, project. But, I thought, oh, okay, I can render them. But I'm just all into the possibilities. They feel good too. It feels good when you're fucked up to find something that feels really good. And I guess that's all I have to say about translation, right? Is that, ultimately the artificiality of the language is constitutive only upon the measure through which we're beholden to a first or second or third or millionth tongue. But I find that my tongue fits really nicely in here.
That's fantastic. I'm just going to jump in for one moment and then hand the mic to you, Ura, to close it out. But I love this question, and I wanted to repeat it, Ronaldo, this question of how do we make the palpable, how do we make palpable the unknowing, and how do we render the exilic? And this question of exile reminded me of something Hashim Sarkis, who was our guest yesterday, said. He came in, he's a Lebanese architect who's been in diaspora. He said, estrangement is an ethic. It's a way of looking at the world. It's a subject position. It's a perspectival thing. But I feel like we're all circling around this idea that this void, this void is a place, right? And from it, we look onto other things. And thank you so much for your comments. Ura, passing it to you.
Yeah, that was also beautiful, everybody. Thank you. Ronaldo, I saw your engagement with the object, and I couldn't stop thinking of being in Puerto Rico, right? And everybody's just obsessing about the state of, coral reefs here, the ways in which they're bleached out, right? And so the sense that that's part of all our work too, right? The sense that we are material beings, right? And kind of emphasizing materiality. I think for me, as someone who, and Ronaldo, I think you'll relate to this, as someone who was trained in performance studies, right? You end up with this kind of fetishism of embodiment, right? And then of course, you think through it and you realize all the ways embodiment is, much more porous, right, than we think, right? Both psychoanalytically, right, in terms of queer senses and desire and all that, in terms of course racialization and exile and all the ways we're thinking about it, but also just our relationship to the ecosystem around us, right? So we can acknowledge the materiality of the object, but that seems not to give us the grounding, right, that maybe we think that it has. And I think that's something that poets have to wrestle with always, because we are working in language, and so we're constantly remediating, and maybe that's something that we could bring to conversations such as these, right, which largely center, right, visual art. So yeah, I think that paradox, right, that we are, we must work from our embodiment. What does Borges says? Borges says, like something like the world unfortunately is real. I unfortunately am Borges, right? So however many fictional worlds he creates, he's left with, his own self. So there's that, and that has all kinds of possibilities, and overcoming your own body is a privilege, but also embodiment doesn't seem to ground things, right, in the ways in which it might seem to, right, and the kinds of essentialized, right, art practices or political imaginaries that we associate. So yeah, that ties into duck language, LaTasha, right? We could never speak for the duck, right? Can we listen to the duck? Maybe, right? And what kind of work would we make if we gave up on speaking duck? Hablar pato es otra cosa en puertorriqueño, but that's maybe a happy pride, everybody. So yeah, I don't know. Should we do a little? Can we do a little? I don't know, 30-second. Just chant something for people. Share something as a going away. Let's say something. Algo para las masas digitales.
Quack, quack.
Joey, what you got? No queda nada, improvisando, Yara, Yara,
Es más difícil que bueno año. LaTasha's hat is on.
My baloney has a first name. It's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name. It's M-E-Y-E-R. Oh, I love to eat it every day. And if you ask me why, I'll say, 'cause Oscar Mayer has a way of B-O-L-O-N-G-N-A.
That's it, everybody. Gracias.
All right, Rakim. Bye. This is so fun.
All right, we'll see you all tomorrow
So
for band practice. Bye. Bye, all.
Bye, you guys.
Thank you.
Bye, Jeanette. Bye, your way.
Love you guys.
Bye, Jean.
Love and courage.